You either give my wife your room or you pack your bags." My son Daniel shouted those words in the middle of a dinner I had prepared myself. He didn't whisper it, he didn't imply it, he shouted it, in front of everyone, as if he were giving an order to an employee, as if my room was negotiable, as if I didn't have the right to say no in my own house. Jessica, his wife, was sitting next to him with that small, controlled smile she used when she knew she was about to get her way. My sister-in-law Helen looked away uncomfortable, but saying nothing. My granddaughter Laura pressed her lips together and lowered her head. No one defended me. No one said a word. And I, Adele Beltran, 69 years old, a widow, a devoted mother for decades, just sat there feeling something inside me break in a strange way. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. For the first time in a long time, I saw the situation exactly as it was. My son was kicking me out of my own room as if I were a piece of furniture that needed to be moved. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I took a deep breath, set my silverware on the table, and said in a voice so calm it even surprised me, "All right, Daniel, I'll pack my bags." The silence that followed was heavy. Daniel looked at me confused, as if he had expected screams or tears. Jessica let out a nervous laugh. Helen cleared her throat. Laura looked up surprised, but I had already stood up, folded my napkin carefully, and was walking toward my room with my back straight. That night, while they continued in the dining room pretending everything was normal, I was sitting on the edge of my bed with my cell phone in my hand. I wasn't crying. I wasn't paralyzed. I was looking at houses for sale by the ocean. There was a listing that Rachel, my best friend, had sent me weeks ago on WhatsApp. It was a small, pretty house with a terrace and an ocean view. She had written, "Adele, look at this. Someday you and I are going to have a house like this and toast while watching the sunset." I had replied with a laughing emoji as if it were a distant fantasy. But that night, with the sound of glasses and fake laughter coming from the dining room, I opened that message and looked at it with new eyes. The house was 2 hours from the city. It had 2 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a price that, while high, fit perfectly into my savings. Savings I had built up for years. Years of working as a freelance accountant. Years of saving every dollar I had left after paying the bills for this house. Years of saying no to trips, to whims, to things I wanted for myself, because there was always something more urgent. Daniel's college, Daniel's car, Daniel's wedding, the rent on Daniel and Jessica's apartment when they were short. I took a screenshot of the listing. I opened my banking app and checked my savings. I had enough, more than enough. And for the first time in decades, I thought something that made me feel dizzy and free at the same time. This money is mine. The next morning at 7 a.m., I dialed the real estate agent's number. A young woman with a professional voice answered. I told her I wanted to see the property that same day. There was a brief pause, then she replied, "Perfect, Mrs. Beltran. I'll see you at 11. I confirmed, hung up, and stared at the phone screen as if I had just crossed an invisible line. Daniel came downstairs at 9, disheveled and yawning. He saw me sitting on the living room sofa and frowned. "Is breakfast ready?" "No," I replied without looking up. "I'm going out." "Where are you going so early?" "I have an appointment." He huffed, opened the refrigerator, and started pulling things out as if this house were his. "Well, don't be long. Jessica wants you to take her to the mall later." "I won't be able to," I said, and stood up from the sofa before he could reply. Daniel looked at me strangely, but said nothing more. I went up to my room, which was now officially Jessica's, according to what had happened the night before, and took clean clothes from my closet. I dressed calmly. A pair of jeans Rachel had convinced me to buy last month, a simple white blouse, my walking shoes. I looked in the mirror and saw a 69-year-old woman who still had clarity in her eyes and decision in her jaw. I left the house at 10:30. Daniel was watching TV in the living room. Jessica was still sleeping. No one asked me where I was going. No one stopped me. I drove the 2 hours to the coast with the windows down and an old playlist of songs I used to listen to when I was young. It had been years since I had driven alone for so long. It had been years since I had done anything alone, really. There was always someone who needed something, always a call, a favor, an emergency. But that day, driving down the highway with the wind hitting my face, I felt light. I arrived at the house at 11 o'clock sharp. The real estate agent was already there, a man in his 50s with a white shirt and a kind smile. "Mrs. Beltran, what a pleasure. Come in." The house was even nicer in person. Small, yes, but bright. The windows looked directly out at the sea. The terrace had enough space for a table and chairs. I could picture myself there drinking coffee in the mornings, reading, listening to the waves. "What do you think?" the agent asked. "I think it's perfect," I replied. He smiled. "Do you want to think about it for a few days?" "No," I said. "I want to buy it now." The agent looked at me surprised, as if he wasn't used to someone deciding so quickly. "Are you sure, Mrs. Beltran, this is a big decision?" "I've been making decisions for 69 years, I told him. "This is the first one I'm making just for me." He nodded, still a bit taken aback, but he pulled the papers from his briefcase. He explained the details. The price was $180,000. I could make the transfer in 2 days. The house was free of debt and ready to close. I nodded as he spoke, but in my mind I was already doing the math. I had $210,000 saved. I would have $30,000 left over for whatever came next. I signed the first documents right there at the empty kitchen table of that house that already felt like mine. The agent gave me his card, explained the next steps, and told me I could move in 72 hours if I wanted. "Perfect," I said. "I want to move in 72 hours." I left the house with the temporary keys in my hand and stood on the terrace looking at the sea. The waves came and went with a constant, predictable, calm rhythm. They didn't ask for anything. They didn't demand anything. They just existed. I took out my phone and took a picture of the horizon. I sent it to Rachel on WhatsApp with a simple message. "I did it." She replied in seconds. "What did you do?" "I bought the beach house." There was a long pause. Then the messages started pouring in, one after the other. "You're not serious." "Adele, answer me." "Did you really buy the house? How does Daniel know?" I laughed to myself on that empty terrace. "Daniel doesn't know anything," I wrote. "And I'm not going to tell him until I'm already living here." Rachel called me immediately. I answered, and before I could speak, she was already screaming with excitement. "Adele Beltran, I can't believe you did it. I'm so proud of you. Tell me everything." "What happened? What did Daniel say when you told him?" "I haven't told him anything yet," I replied. "Yesterday at dinner, he yelled at me that I either give Jessica my room or pack my bags. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to pack my bags and I'm going to leave." Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. "That boy has no idea who he's messing with." "Does he?" "No," I said, looking at the sea. "He has no idea." I returned to the city that same afternoon. I drove slower, unhurried, enjoying the drive. When I got to the house, it was almost 6 in the evening. Daniel was in the living room watching a series on TV. Jessica was in the kitchen preparing something using my pots, my stove, as if she were already the owner. "Where were you?" Daniel asked without looking up from the screen. "Taking care of things," I replied, and went straight up to my room. I closed the door and stood in the middle of the room looking at everything I had accumulated over the years. Framed photos of Daniel as a child, the watch my husband gave me before he died, the quilt I had bought on a trip to Florida, the books stacked on the nightstand. Everything had a history, a memory, a piece of my life, but none of it made me feel at home anymore. I pulled 2 large suitcases from the closet and started packing. Clothes first, then shoes. Important documents, jewelry, photos that truly mattered to me, not the ones I kept out of obligation. I worked in silence for hours. No one came up to ask what I was doing. No one knocked on the door. At 10 o'clock at night, Daniel yelled from downstairs. "Mom, are you going to make dinner or what?" "No," I yelled back. "Order something." There was a silence. Then I heard murmuring. Probably Daniel complaining to Jessica. But they didn't come up. They didn't insist. They were used to me always giving in to me, always fixing things to me, always being available. I kept packing. The next day, very early, I called Rachel. "I need you to do me a huge favor," I told her. "Anything," she replied. "I need you to come with me to the notary's office. I'm going to put this house up for sale." There was a brief silence. Then Rachel said in a firm voice, "I'll be there in half an hour." I ate breakfast alone in the kitchen. Daniel and Jessica were still sleeping in my room. I washed my cup, dried it, and put it away. Then I looked up the contact for Sarah Rose on my phone, a lawyer I knew from my walking group. I texted her on WhatsApp. "Sarah, I need urgent legal advice regarding a property sale and a will. Do you have time this week?" She replied quickly, "I have time today at 4. Does that work?" "Perfect," I wrote. Rachel arrived at 9 o'clock sharp. She rang the doorbell and I went out before Daniel came downstairs. We hugged at the door and she looked me in the eyes with that mix of concern and pride that only a friend of so many years can have. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "More sure than I've been about anything in my life," I replied. We went to the notary's office together. The process was faster than I thought. I put the house up for sale at a fair market price, $320,000. The notary explained that at that price, and with the location, it would probably sell in less than a month. "Perfect," I said. Rachel took me to a cafe afterward. We sat at a table by the window and she ordered 2 cappuccinos. "And now what?" she asked. "Now I wait for both properties to sell," I said. "This house and the beach house is almost mine. When I have everything ready, I'm leaving. No dramatic goodbyes, no long explanations. I'm just leaving." "And Daniel is going to have to learn to live without using his mother as the solution to all his problems." Rachel smiled and raised her cup. "I'll drink to that." We clinked our coffee cups as if they were champagne glasses. That afternoon, I went to my appointment with Sarah. Her office was small but tidy, full of legal books and perfectly labeled folders. She greeted me with a firm handshake and offered me water. "Tell me what you need, Adele." I told her everything. The dinner, Daniel's shouting, the purchase of the beach house, the sale of this house. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in a notebook. When I finished, she set her pen on the desk and looked at me seriously. "Does Daniel know any of this?" "No," I replied, "and I don't want him to know until it's already done." "I understand," Sarah said. "Legally, he doesn't need to know anything. The house is in your name. Your savings are yours. You're not married. You have no obligation to inform him about your financial decisions." "Good. But," Sarah continued, "I need you to think about something important. What if Daniel reacts badly? What if he tries to sue you or claim something?" "Let him try," I said. "I don't owe him anything. I gave him everything for 42 years. It's enough." Sarah nodded. "Then we're going to do this right. I'm going to prepare a document that makes it clear your assets are yours and that any future transfers will be on your terms. I'm also going to update your will." "My will?" "Yes. Because if anything happens to you, I want you to have total control over who receives what." "Is there anyone besides Daniel?" "My granddaughter Laura," I said. "She has always been different. She has always treated me with real affection, not obligation." "Perfect. We'll include her." I left that office feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Control over my life, over my money, over my future. The next few days in that house were strange. I was still living there, cooking, cleaning, doing the things I had always done, but something had changed. I no longer did it on autopilot. I did it knowing that every day that passed was one day less in that place. Daniel and Jessica had settled into my room as if it had always been theirs. Jessica reorganized the closet, moved the furniture, hung her clothes where mine used to be. Daniel said nothing. He didn't ask how I felt sleeping in the guest room. He didn't ask if I was upset. He simply assumed I had accepted my place. One afternoon, while I was in the kitchen preparing food, Jessica came downstairs with a handwritten list. "Adele?" she said without greeting me. "I need you to go to the supermarket and buy these things. Daniel and I are inviting some friends over on Saturday." She handed me the list. I read the items: expensive wine, imported cheeses, premium meats, desserts from a specific bakery. It all easily added up to over $200. "And who is going to pay for this?" I asked without looking up from the paper. Jessica looked at me as if the question was absurd. "Well, you obviously. It's your house." "Ah," I replied, folding the list carefully. "I thought it wasn't my house anymore. I thought it was yours now." She frowned. Don't start with the drama, Adele. You know what I mean. Yes, I know exactly what you mean, I said, handing her back the list. If you want to have a party, fine, but you pay for it. Jessica's mouth fell open, shocked. What's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? I'm not acting anyway, I replied calmly. I'm just telling you that if you want to host something, you host it with your money. She huffed and stormed out of the kitchen yelling, Daniel, your mother is being impossible. Daniel came down the stairs with an annoyed look on his face. What is it now? Your mom says she won't pay for the food for the party on Saturday, Jessica said, crossing her arms. Daniel looked at me as if I were a spoiled child. Mom, don't be difficult. It's just one meal. Exactly, I said. It's just one meal that you two can pay for. And what has gotten into you lately? Daniel asked, raising his voice. You've been weird since last week. You talk back. You don't help. It seems like it bothers you that we're here. It doesn't bother me that you're here, I said, looking him straight in the eye. It bothers me that you treat me like I work for you. Nobody is treating you like that, Jessica said. No, I asked. Then what do you call what happened at dinner last week? What do you call yelling at me to pack my bags if I don't give you my room? There was an awkward silence. Daniel averted his gaze. Jessica pressed her lips together. You were exaggerating, Mom, Daniel said finally. I didn't yell at you. I just asked you to be reasonable. You asked me to be reasonable, I repeated slowly. By yelling at me, in front of everyone. It was a misunderstanding, Jessica intervened with a soft voice, the voice she used when she wanted to seem like the peacemaker. We were all stressed. Daniel didn't mean to say it like that. But he did say it like that, I replied. And you two kept my room, so I guess the misunderstanding worked out well for you. Daniel huffed. You know what, I'm not going to argue about this. If you don't want to help with the food, don't help. We'll figure it out. Perfect, I said, and went back to what I was doing. They went back up to the room, murmuring to each other. I heard fragments. She's unbearable. I don't know what's wrong with her. She wasn't like this before. They were right. I wasn't like this before. Before I said yes to everything. Before I apologized for things that weren't my fault. Before I lived to please them. That night, after everyone fell asleep, I went down to the living room and sat on the sofa with my phone. I opened my chat with Rachel and wrote, Every day I spend here, I realize how much time I wasted being the person they wanted me to be. She replied immediately despite the hour, But you're not wasting time anymore. Now you're getting it back. I smiled in the darkness of the living room. The next day, the real estate agent called me. Mrs. Beltran, I have good news. There are already 3 people interested in seeing your house. Can we schedule viewings for this week? Yes, I replied. But I need them to be at specific times, between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon when my son isn't here. The agent didn't ask any questions. He just said, Perfect. I'll arrange everything and confirm with you. I hung up and stared at the phone. This was happening. It was really happening. On Wednesday, the first couple came to see the house. Daniel and Jessica had gone out to run some errands. I greeted the people and the potential buyers at the door. They were young newlyweds with that excitement in their eyes that comes from looking for your first home. I showed them every room, the large kitchen, the living room with good light, the small but well-kept garden. They asked questions, took photos, measured spaces. At the end at the door, they told me, It's beautiful, ma'am. We're going to think about it and let you know. 2 other viewings came that week, all while Daniel wasn't there. All ended with the same phrase, We'll think about it. On Friday, Sarah called me. Adele, the documents are ready. Can you come in and sign them? I'll be there tomorrow, I said. Saturday morning, while Daniel and Jessica were still sleeping, I left the house and drove to Sarah's office. She greeted me with fresh coffee and a thick folder full of papers. This is your updated will, she said, pointing to the first document. Laura receives 60% of your assets. Daniel receives 40%. And here is the clause specifying that if anyone tries to contest the will, they automatically lose their share. I signed every page, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I was protecting what was mine. Sadness because I had to protect myself from my own son. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked when I finished signing. "Like I'm finally waking up," I replied. That afternoon when I returned to the house, Daniel and Jessica were in the living room arguing in low voices. When they saw me come in, they immediately fell silent. "Where were you?" Daniel asked. "Out," I replied without giving details. "Out where?" "Taking care of things." He looked at me with suspicion, but didn't press. Jessica, on the other hand, had that expression she wore when she was planning something. "Adele," she said sweetly, "we need to talk to you about something important." I sat in the armchair across from them. "About what?" "Daniel and I got kicked out of our apartment," Jessica said directly. "The owner wants to sell it, and we have to be out in 2 weeks." "I'm very sorry," I said. "Are you already looking for another place?" "Well," Daniel said, "we were thinking we could stay here for a while. After all, there's enough space." "Here," I repeated. "Yes," Jessica said. "It wouldn't be forever, just until we find something. A few months, maybe." I looked her in the eyes. Then I looked at Daniel. They both looked at me with that mix of expectation and demand disguised as need. "No," I said simply. "What?" Daniel asked. "I said no, you can't stay here." "Mom," Daniel said, raising his voice, "we're your family. Are you going to throw us out on the street?" "I'm not throwing you out on the street," I replied calmly. "I'm letting you solve your problems like the adults you are." Daniel stood up abruptly. "I can't believe what I'm hearing. What is wrong with you, Mom? Since when are you so selfish?" "Selfish?" I repeated the word slowly, letting it hang in the air. "It's interesting you use that word." "What else do you want me to call it?" he said, throwing his hands up. "You have this huge house all to yourself, and you won't help your own son." "This house isn't huge, Daniel. It has 3 bedrooms. One is mine, which you now occupy. Another is the guest room where I sleep now, and the third is my office where I work." "Well, turn the office into a bedroom," Jessica said. "It's not that hard." I stared at her. "My office is where I earn the money I use to pay for this house." "Where do you suggest I work in the kitchen?" "Don't be dramatic," Daniel said. "You always exaggerate everything." I took a deep breath. "I'm not going to argue about this. The answer is no." "Mom," Daniel said, changing his tone now softer, more manipulative. "I know you've been stressed lately. I know maybe I said things I shouldn't have at dinner, but we're family. Families help each other." "Families respect each other," I replied, "and you haven't respected me in a long time." "That's not true." "No," I asked. "What do you call yelling at me to pack my bags if I don't give you my room? Respect." "I already apologized for that." He lied. He didn't say it. He never had. But I knew inventing it was his way out of the conversation. "No, Daniel, you didn't apologize. You didn't even acknowledge you did it." Jessica intervened with that victim voice she knew how to use so well. "Adele, we are really in a difficult situation. We have nowhere to go. Are you really going to turn your back on us?" "You are adults with jobs," I replied. "You can rent another place. You can get a loan. You can do what millions of people do when they need housing." "But you're his mother," Jessica insisted. "Mothers are supposed to help." "And I did," I said, getting up from the armchair. "I helped for 42 years. I paid for your college, Daniel. I bought you your first car. I lent you money for the wedding. I've helped you with rent more times than I can count. I've helped enough." "I can't believe you're being like this," Daniel said, his voice trembling, pretending to be on the verge of tears. "My own mother denying me a roof over my head." "I'm not denying you a roof," I said, walking toward the stairs. "I'm denying you my roof. There's a difference." I went up to my room, the guest room, and closed the door. I heard Daniel and Jessica talking downstairs, their voices rising in volume. I heard stray words: ungrateful, selfish, bitter old woman. I sat on the bed and opened my phone. I wrote to Rachel. "It just happened. They asked to move in. I told them no." She replied with an audio message. Her voice sounded proud. "Adele Beltran, you are my hero. How did they take it?" "As expected," I wrote. "They called me selfish." "Oh, please," Rachel replied in another audio. Selfish is what they've been to you their whole lives. You're just setting boundaries. That's not selfishness, it's survival. I smiled at the screen. Thanks, Rachel. That night, Daniel and Jessica went out without telling me where they were going. They came back late after midnight. I heard them come up the stairs, go into my old room, and close the door harder than necessary. On Sunday morning, I woke up early as usual. I went down to the kitchen and made coffee just for myself. I didn't make breakfast for everyone anymore. I didn't set the table for 3. I just served my cup, my toast, my fruit. Daniel came down around 11, looking like he hadn't slept well. He saw me sitting at the table reading the news on my tablet and said nothing. He went straight to the coffee pot, poured himself a cup, and stood leaning against the counter staring at me. "What?" I asked without looking up. "Nothing," he said. "I'm just wondering what happened to you." "What happened to me?" I repeated. "Yeah, you used to be different. You used to care about your family." I put the tablet on the table and looked at him directly. "I used to care so much about my family that I forgot about myself. That's the difference." He snorted. "That sounds like something you read in a cheap self-help book." "It sounds like something I should have understood 30 years ago," I replied. Daniel slammed his cup on the counter. "You know what, Mom? Do whatever you want. You've always done what you wanted anyway." I laughed. It was a short, almost bitter laugh. "Daniel, if I had done what I wanted, I would have traveled the world when your father died. I would have gotten the master's degree I always wanted. I would have lived alone and in peace. But no. I stayed here taking care of you, helping you, waiting for you to value me, even a little." "I do value you," he said, but without conviction. "No, Daniel, you use me. And there's a huge difference between valuing and using." He fell silent. He had no answer for that, because he knew it was true. Jessica came down a few minutes later, already dressed with perfect makeup and that air of superiority she always carried. "Good morning," she said without looking at me. "Good morning," I replied. She poured herself coffee and sat next to Daniel. They both ignored me talking to each other in low voices as if I wasn't there. "Adele," Jessica said suddenly, "we need to use your car today. Ours is giving us trouble." "No," I said. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, I'm not lending you my car." "And how are we supposed to get around?" Daniel asked. "In a taxi, in an Uber, walking, like everyone else." Jessica let out a dry laugh. "Unbelievable. First you won't let us stay here, and now you won't lend us the car. What's next? Are you going to charge us for the air we breathe in your house? If you want, you can leave right now and breathe the air somewhere else," I said, unruffled. Daniel slammed the table. "Enough. That's enough, Mom. I don't know what's wrong with you, but this is too much." "What's wrong with me, Daniel, is that I'm tired. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of being treated like a maid. I'm tired of you assuming that everything I own is yours." "Nobody assumes that," Jessica lied. "No," I asked. "Then tell me, Jessica, why are you sleeping in my room? Why are you using my kitchen as if it's yours? Why do you assume I'm going to pay for your parties and lend you my things?" She opened her mouth but said nothing. I got up from the table, washed my cup, and left the kitchen. I went up to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and took several deep breaths. My phone chimed. It was a message from the real estate agent. "Mrs. Beltran, the young couple that came on Wednesday, wants to make an offer, $315,000. Are you interested?" I replied immediately. "Yes, I accept." "Perfect," he wrote. "I'll prepare the papers. We can close the sale in a week." 1 week. In 1 week, this house would no longer be mine. And Daniel had no idea. That afternoon, while they were upstairs, I went down to the living room and started packing things discreetly. Photos I really wanted to keep, books that mattered to me, documents. I put everything in boxes that I hid in the guest room. Daniel and Jessica didn't notice anything. They were too busy with their own drama. On Monday morning, while Daniel and Jessica were still sleeping, I left the house with 3 boxes in the car. I took them to a storage unit I had rented the week before. It was a small space enough to store the essentials until I moved permanently to the beach house. The employee at the storage facility helped me register my name and handed me the keys. Are you moving a lot of things?" she asked kindly. "Just the important things," I replied. I returned home before noon. Daniel was in the living room with his laptop working from the sofa. He watched me come in but said nothing. I went straight up to my temporary room and continued organizing. That afternoon I received a message from Sarah. "Adele, the buyer for your house, wants to close early. They can be ready by Thursday. Does that work for you?" I stared at the message for several seconds. Thursday? 3 days. In 3 days, this house would officially stop being mine. "Perfect," I wrote. "Thursday is fine." I called Rachel immediately. "I need you to come with me on Thursday to sign the sale of the house." "I'll be there," she said without hesitation. "Do you know when you're moving to the beach?" "Friday," I replied. "I'm going to sign the sale on Thursday, and on Friday I'm leaving. And Daniel is going to find out on Thursday night when there's no turning back." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure you want to do it this way?" "Completely sure," I said. "If I tell him sooner, he'll try to manipulate me to make me feel guilty to convince me not to do it. I've made my decision, and I'm not going to let him change it." "You're right," Rachel said. "You're stronger than you think, Adele." "I'm learning to be," I replied. The next few days were strange. I was still living in that house, walking the halls, cooking in the kitchen, but mentally I was no longer there. I was at the beach, in my new house, in my new life. Daniel and Jessica noticed my distance, but they interpreted it as a passing anger. They thought I would eventually get over it, that I would go back to being the accommodating mother I had always been. On Tuesday, Jessica tried a different strategy. She came into the kitchen while I was preparing food, a forced smile on her face. "Adele," she said sweetly, "I know things have been tense lately, and I want you to know I'm sorry." I looked at her without saying anything. "Really?" she continued. "Daniel and I have been very stressed about the apartment, and I think we haven't been fair to you." "Uh-huh," I said, continuing with what I was doing. "What I mean is we value everything you do for us, and we want to make it up to you." "Make it up to me?" I asked. "Yes," she said, pulling out her phone. "Look, I found this spa that has an all-day package. Massages, facial, everything. I thought we could go together this weekend. You and me, like friends." I looked her straight in the eye. "Who's going to pay for this spa, Jessica?" She blinked uncomfortable. "Well, I thought maybe you could treat me, as a gesture of—" "No," I interrupted. "I'm not treating you to any spa." Her smile vanished. "It was just an idea," she said curtly. "You don't have to be rude." "I'm not being rude," I replied. "I'm being clear. I'm not going to spend my money buying you things so you can pretend to appreciate me." She opened her mouth, offended. "I'm not pretending anything." "Yes, you are, Jessica, and we both know it." She left the kitchen muttering something I couldn't hear. I didn't care. On Wednesday night, Daniel tried his own approach. He knocked on my door around 10. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Come in," I said. He came in and sat on the edge of the bed. I was folding clothes, putting the last things in my suitcase. "Mom," he said in a tired voice, "I don't want us to be fighting." "We're not fighting, Daniel," I replied without looking at him. "I'm just no longer willing to let you disrespect me." "I never wanted to disrespect you." "But you did," I said, stopping and looking at him. "You did it when you yelled at me at dinner. You did it when you took my room without asking if I was okay. You did it every time you assumed I was going to solve your problems." He ran his hands over his face. "I don't know what else you want me to do. I already told you I'm sorry." "You haven't said you're sorry, Daniel. You've said you're sorry that I'm upset. It's not the same." He fell silent. "Do you know what the problem is?" I continued. "You think that by saying sorry, everything magically goes back to the way it was. But it doesn't work like that. You can't disrespect me and expect me to just forget it." "It wasn't my intention to make you feel bad," he said, and for the first time he sounded genuine. "But you did," I replied, "and intentions don't change the damage." He nodded slowly. "What can I do to fix it?" "Nothing, Daniel. It's too late to fix it." And he looked at me confused. "What does that mean?" "It means I've already made decisions about my life, and I'm not changing them." "What decisions?" "You'll find out soon enough," I said, and continued folding clothes. He sat there for a few more minutes waiting for me to say something else, but I didn't. He finally got up and left the room, closing the door slowly. I barely slept that night. Tomorrow was Thursday. Tomorrow I was going to sign the sale. Tomorrow everything would change. I got up early. I dressed carefully. Black pants, a white blouse, my pearl earrings. I wanted to look good, to feel good for this moment. I went down to the kitchen and made coffee. Daniel and Jessica were still sleeping. I left a note on the table. Went out to run errands. I'll be back this afternoon. Rachel picked me up at 9 o'clock sharp. I got in her car, and before starting it, she looked at me seriously. "Ready?" "More than ready," I replied. We went straight to the notary's office. The buyer was already there, a young man about 35 with his wife. We greeted each other formally and sat around the notary's table. The notary read all the documents in that monotone voice lawyers have. He explained the terms, the conditions, the dates. The buyer was going to pay $315,000. The transaction would be completed today. I had until Sunday to completely vacate the property. "Any questions?" the notary asked. "None," I replied. I signed every page one after another, my name in cursive, Adele Beltran, sealing the end of an era. When I finished, the notary handed me a check, $315,000. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of freedom. Rachel squeezed my hand under the table. We left the notary's office around noon. Rachel hugged me on the street. "You did it," she said. "You really did it." "Yes," I replied, and I was surprised to feel tears in my eyes. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. "Want to get something to eat before you go back?" Rachel asked. "Yes," I said. "I want to celebrate." We went to a small restaurant we liked, one overlooking a park. We ordered white wine and pasta. We toasted to new beginnings. "When are you going to tell him?" Rachel asked. "Tonight," I replied. "When I get home." "Do you want me to go with you?" "No," I said. "I have to do this alone." I got back to the house around 5 in the afternoon. Daniel's car was parked outside. I took a deep breath before opening the door. I entered the house and found Daniel and Jessica in the living room watching TV. They looked up when they saw me arrive. "Where were you?" Daniel asked. "Taking care of business," I replied, leaving my purse on the dining room table. "What business?" He had that annoyed expression I knew so well, but he didn't say anything more. I went up to my room and sat there on the bed for several minutes, mentally preparing myself for what was coming. At 7, I came back down. Daniel was in the kitchen making himself a sandwich. Jessica was still in the living room, cell phone in hand. "Daniel, Jessica," I said from the kitchen doorway, "I need to talk to you." Daniel put the knife down on the counter. "About what?" "Come to the living room, please." They both followed me with expressions of curiosity mixed with irritation. We sat down them on the sofa, me in the armchair. I took a deep breath and spoke in a clear, firm voice. "I sold the house." There was absolute silence. Daniel looked at me as if he hadn't understood the words. Jessica blinked several times. "What did you say?" Daniel asked finally. "I said I sold the house. I signed the papers this morning. The new owners take possession on Sunday." Daniel stood up abruptly. "What? You can't do that." "I already did," I replied calmly. "This is my house, my—" He yelled, "I grew up here. You can't sell it without consulting me." "This house is in my name, Daniel. I don't need to consult you on anything." Jessica stood up too. Wait, and where are we supposed to live?" "That is your problem, not mine," I replied. "Our problem," Daniel repeated, incredulous. "Mom, you just made us homeless." "You haven't had a home here for a week ever since I told you you couldn't stay. The problem is, you didn't believe me." "This can't be happening," Jessica said, pacing back and forth. "This has to be a joke." "It's not a joke," I said. "You have until Sunday to get your things out." "No," Daniel shouted. "I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to talk to a lawyer. I'm going to contest the sale." "You can try," I replied. "But the house was in my name. There are no debts, no mortgage, and the sale is completely legal. I already checked with my lawyer." "Your lawyer?" Daniel asked. "Since when do you have a lawyer?" since I decided it was time to protect what's mine. Jessica pointed her finger at me. You are selfish. A selfish, cruel old woman. I looked at her without blinking. Tell me, Jessica, am I selfish because I sold my house? Or am I selfish because I didn't let you keep using me? We're not using you, Daniel yelled. We're your family. And I am your mother, not your solution to all your problems. Daniel ran his hands through his hair, clearly desperate. Mom, please, there has to be a way to fix this. Cancel the sale. Tell them you changed your mind. I'm not canceling anything, but we have nowhere to go. Then start looking, I said, getting up from the armchair. You have 3 days. Daniel blocked my path. I'm not going to let you do this. Move, Daniel, I said in a low but firm voice. Not until you explain what the hell is wrong with you. Who are you? This person isn't my mother. You're right, I replied. This isn't the mother you knew. That mother got tired of being invisible. This mother decided to live for herself. I gently pushed him aside and went up the stairs. I heard Jessica screaming downstairs. This isn't over. We're going to sue you. Go ahead, I yelled from upstairs. Talk to all the lawyers you want. I went into my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and waited for my heart to stop pounding so fast. I had done it. I had told them the truth, and the sky hadn't fallen. My phone rang. It was Rachel. Did you tell them? Yes, I replied. How did they react? As expected, yelling, threats, drama. Are you okay? I'm perfect, I said, and I was surprised to realize it was true. I didn't sleep that night. I heard Daniel and Jessica arguing late, their voices rising and falling, alternating between rage and panic. At some point, I heard Jessica cry. Daniel called someone on the phone, probably a lawyer, but from what I could overhear, they told him the same thing he already knew. The sale was legal. Friday morning. I went down to the kitchen early. Daniel was already there, sitting at the table with a cold cup of coffee in front of him. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes and disheveled hair. Mom, he said when he saw me, we need to talk. We already talked yesterday, I replied, pouring myself coffee. No, really talk. No yelling, please. I sat down across from him. Talk. I know I messed up, he said, looking at his cup. I know I said horrible things. I know I treated you badly. Yes, you did. And I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I looked him in the eyes, searching for sincerity. I found desperation. Daniel, I said softly, the problem isn't just what you said at dinner. The problem is that dinner was just the straw that broke the camel's back. It's been years of you treating me like I exist only to solve your problems. It's not like that, he protested weakly. Yes, it is, I insisted. When was the last time you asked me how I was? When was the last time you visited me just because you wanted to see me, not because you needed something? He was silent. Exactly, I said. You don't remember because it's never happened. I'm going to change, he said. I promise you, I'm going to be a better son. I don't need you to be a better son, Daniel. It's too late for that. What I need is to live my life without feeling like I owe someone something all the time. And what am I supposed to do? He asked, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. What all adults do, I replied. Figure it out. Jessica came down at that moment, also with dark circles, also disheveled. She looked at both of us and then poured herself coffee without a word. The atmosphere in the house that Friday was tense and silent. Daniel and Jessica spent most of the day in their room on the phone, looking for apartments, talking to potential landlords, moving their small life from one place to another. I continued packing my things calmly. Every object I packed was one step closer to my freedom. In the middle of the afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Mrs. Beltran, a young woman's voice said. Yes, this is she. It's Laura. My granddaughter, the only person in this whole family who had treated me with genuine affection. Hi, sweetheart, I said, feeling my voice soften. Grandma, she said, and she sounded worried. My dad called me. He told me you sold the house. Yes, Laura, I sold it. Is it true? Completely true. There was a pause. Then she said, "Good." "Good?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, good. I heard what my dad said to you at dinner last week. I was there. Remember, I was so embarrassed. I was so angry, but I didn't know what to say." I felt a lump in my throat. "What you did is right, Grandma," Laura continued. "You deserve to live your life. You deserve respect. And if my dad won't give it to you, then you deserve to get away." "Thank you, sweetheart," I said, my voice breaking. "Where are you going to go?" she asked. "I bought a house on the beach," I replied. "Small, quiet, with an ocean view." "That sounds beautiful." "It is." "Can I visit you?" she asked timidly. "Whenever you want, Laura. You will always be welcome." After hanging up with Laura, I sat in my room looking out the window. Hearing her support had been like receiving a hug after days of coldness. At least someone in this family understood. Saturday dawned overcast. I woke up early and continued packing. I already had 4 full suitcases and 6 sealed boxes. Rachel was coming later to help me take everything to the storage unit. I went down to the kitchen and found Jessica sitting at the table with her laptop open. Her eyes were red as if she had cried all night. "Good morning," I said neutrally. She didn't even look up. She didn't answer. I poured myself coffee and leaned against the counter. The silence was thick, uncomfortable. "We found an apartment," Jessica said finally without looking at me. "It's horrible, small old in a bad neighborhood, but it's the only thing we can afford." I said nothing. "It costs $1,200 a month," she continued, "more than double what we were paying before. And they're asking for 2 months' deposit plus the first month. That's $3,600 we don't have." She kept talking as if I was going to offer to help, as if this was all a negotiation. "We're going to have to borrow money," she said, finally looking at me. "Probably from my sister, who will never let us forget that she had to bail us out." "You're still waiting for me to offer to pay for it, aren't you?" I asked. "You're his mother," Jessica replied. "I thought you'd at least care." "I care about Daniel," I said. "What I don't care about is continuing to be his permanent solution to problems he creates himself." "We didn't create this," she said, raising her voice. "You created this. You left us homeless." "You had a home," I replied calmly. "An apartment you were renting, which you lost because you couldn't pay. That's not my fault. We could have stayed here." "No, you couldn't. This is my house and I decided to sell it." "You're cruel," Jessica said, her voice trembling. "I always thought you were a good person, but you're cruel." I looked at her directly. "Do you know what's cruel, Jessica? Cruel is yelling at someone to pack their bags in their own house. Cruel is taking someone's room without asking. Cruel is assuming someone exists only to serve you." "I never did that." "Yes, you did. From the day you entered this family, you treated me like an employee, not a mother-in-law." Jessica slammed her laptop shut. "I'm not arguing with you anymore. You've already won. You've already humiliated us. You've already made it clear you don't want us here." "It's not about wanting you or not wanting you," I said. "It's about me no longer sacrificing my peace for your comfort." She took her laptop and left the kitchen without another word. Rachel arrived at 10 in the morning with her SUV. Between the two of us, we started carrying the boxes and suitcases down. Daniel came out of his room when he heard the noise. "What are you doing? You're not waiting until tomorrow." "There's no reason to wait." He just stood on the stairs watching me carry down one box after another. He didn't offer to help. He just watched his expression, somewhere between confused and hurt. Rachel and I made 3 trips to the storage unit. On the last one, as we closed the back of the SUV, Rachel said, "Tomorrow is the big day." "Tomorrow I leave," I confirmed. "How do you feel?" "Light," I replied. "Like I've taken off a weight I've been carrying for decades." "So what?" We returned to the house at noon. Daniel and Jessica were packing too. I saw boxes in the living room, piles of clothes, scattered objects. The house that had been my home for so many years now looked like a place being dismantled. I went up to my room and took the last things out of the drawers. Old photos, letters, documents, everything fit into one small box. It was surprising how little I really needed. That night I made dinner just for myself, a simple plate of pasta. Daniel and Jessica ordered takeout and ate in their room. We didn't see each other all afternoon. Around 9, someone knocked on my door. It was Daniel. "Can I come in?" "Go ahead." He came in and stood by the door awkwardly. "You're leaving tomorrow," he said. "Yes." "Do you know where you're going?" "To the beach." "You bought another house?" "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the night of the dinner," I replied. "Since you yelled at me." Daniel looked down. "I didn't think you'd go this far." "Neither did I admitted. "But when I made the decision, I knew it was the right one." "Is there anything I can say to make you change your mind?" "No, Daniel, not anymore." He nodded slowly. "Are you going to be okay? Alone in a new house far from everything." "I'm going to be better than ever," I said with conviction. "And us? You're going to have to learn to be okay without me." Daniel ran a hand over his face. He was quiet for so long I thought he had left without me noticing. But he was still there, leaning against the wall. "I'm sorry I failed you," he finally said in a low voice. I looked at him and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine vulnerability. "I'm sorry for a lot of things too, Daniel," I replied. "I'm sorry I didn't set boundaries sooner. I'm sorry I let you treat me like that for so long. I'm sorry I confused love with sacrifice." He looked up. "Do you not love me anymore?" "I love you," I said. "You're my son, and I will always love you. But I'm not going to let that love destroy me anymore." Daniel nodded, his eyes shining. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this." His words hurt, but not like before. They didn't pierce my chest with paralyzing guilt. They just hurt like an uncomfortable truth hurts. "That's okay, Daniel," I said. "I don't need your forgiveness. I need my peace." He left the room, closing the door slowly. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. There was no anxiety, no insomnia, no tossing and turning, wondering if I was doing the right thing. I knew I was. Sunday dawned sunny. I got up at 6. I showered. I dressed in comfortable clothes for the trip. I brought my last 2 suitcases down and put them by the door. Daniel and Jessica were still sleeping. Rachel arrived promptly at 7. We loaded the suitcases into her SUV. Then I went back into the house for one last look. I walked through every room: the living room where Daniel had taken his first steps, the kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals, the garden where my husband used to read the newspaper on Sundays. Every corner held memories, but none of those memories made me want to stay. I went up to what had been my room. Jessica had transformed everything. She had changed the curtains, moved the furniture, hung new pictures. There was nothing of mine left there. Perfect, I thought. I went downstairs and found Daniel in the living room. He had woken up and was now standing there in his pajamas, looking like he hadn't slept. "You're leaving?" he asked. "Yes." "Can I have your new address?" "I'm going to give it to Laura," I replied. "If she decides to share it with you, that's her decision." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Is that how things are going to be now?" "That's how things are going to be until you show me you can respect my boundaries." He didn't answer. I walked to the door. Before leaving, I turned around one last time. "Take care, Daniel." "You too, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. I left the house and closed the door behind me. I didn't look back. There were no tears, just a long, liberating sigh. Rachel was waiting for me in the SUV with a huge smile. "Ready for your new life?" "More than ready," I replied. We drove the 2 hours to the coast, listening to music, laughing, planning everything we were going to do in the new house. Rachel was going to stay with me for the weekend to help me get settled. We arrived at the beach house around 10 in the morning. The sun was shining on the ocean, and the sound of the waves was the only thing you could hear. Rachel turned off the engine, and we both sat for a moment just looking at the house. "It's yours," Rachel said. "It's mine," I repeated, and the words sounded incredible. We got out of the SUV, and I opened the front door with my keys. The house smelled clean, like a new beginning. The windows let in natural light that brightened every corner. It was small, but it was perfect. Rachel and I spent the rest of the day unpacking. We put my clothes in the closet, arranged the furniture I had bought the week before, hung some pictures on the walls. By the afternoon, the house already felt like a home. We sat on the terrace with a bottle of white wine watching the sunset. The sky was painted orange and pink as the sun sank into the horizon. "A toast to you," Rachel said, raising her glass. "To the bravest woman I know." We clinked glasses and drank in silence. "Do you think Daniel will be okay?" I asked after a while. "Eventually he'll be okay," Rachel replied. "But that's not your responsibility, Adele." "I know, but he's still my son. And you're still a person who deserves to live without guilt." She was right, I knew it. But decades of being a mother don't get erased overnight. That night, after Rachel went to sleep in the guest room, I stayed on the terrace alone looking at the stars. I took out my phone and took a picture of the dark sea lit only by the moon. I sent it to Laura with a message. "I'm home." She replied immediately with a heart emoji, and then, "I'm so happy, Grandma. I'll visit you soon." I smiled at the screen. Then another message came. It was from a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized the area code. It was Daniel. "Mom," the message said, "Jessica and I got the apartment. We're moving in tomorrow. I just wanted you to know." I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because there was nothing to say. Another message arrived 5 minutes later. "I know you're angry, and I get it, but I hope someday we can talk." I put the phone away and went back to watching the sea. The following days were peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. I woke up to the sound of the waves, ate breakfast on the terrace, walked on the beach, read and cooked, just for myself. There was no yelling, no demands, no guilt. Rachel stayed with me all week. In the afternoons, we'd walk along the boardwalk, visit the local markets, and try small restaurants. It was like being on a permanent vacation. On Wednesday, while we were having coffee at a cafe facing the sea, my phone rang. It was Helen, my sister-in-law. "Adele," she said when I answered. "I need to talk to you." "Hi, Helen. What's wrong?" "Daniel told me everything. About the house, the move, everything." Uh-huh, I said, bracing for the lecture. "And I want you to know that I am on your side." I was silent, surprised. "What Daniel did to you at that dinner was horrible," Helen continued. "I was there. I heard it. And I was ashamed I didn't say anything. But I was in shock. I couldn't believe my nephew would talk to his mother like that." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, feeling relieved. "You did the right thing by leaving," she said. "You did the right thing by selling the house. Sometimes family hurts you more than strangers, and you don't have to stay just because they're family." Helen and I talked for almost an hour. She told me she had spoken to Daniel, that she had told him exactly what she thought of his behavior, that Daniel had gotten defensive at first, but eventually admitted he was wrong. "He's scared," Helen said, "scared of losing you, but he still doesn't understand that he caused this." "Someday he'll understand," I said. "Or he won't, but it's not my problem anymore." When I hung up, Rachel looked at me curiously. "Who was that?" "Helen," I replied. "She called to tell me I did the right thing." Rachel smiled. "The world is lining up in your favor, Adele." That afternoon, while we were walking on the beach, I received another message. This time from Jessica. It was a long message. It started by saying she never thought things would go so far, that she had also grown up with a difficult mother, and maybe that's why she didn't realize when she crossed boundaries, that she was sorry for making me feel invisible in my own house. She didn't ask for forgiveness directly, but it was close. "I don't know if you and Daniel can fix things," she wrote at the end, "but I want you to know that I understand why you left." I read the message 3 times. Then I showed it to Rachel. "Are you going to answer?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "I need time to process." Rachel nodded. "You have all the time in the world." On Friday, Laura FaceTimed me. Her face appeared on the screen with a huge smile. "Grandma," she said, "you look so good. You look happy." "I feel happy," I replied. I turned my phone around to show her the ocean view from the terrace. She squealed with excitement. "It's beautiful, Grandma. I'm so proud of you." "Thank you, sweetheart." "How are you?" "Good," she said. "I went to help my dad with the move yesterday. The apartment is small, but it's clean. I think they're going to be okay." "I'm glad to hear that." "Dad asks about you," Laura said, hesitating. "He doesn't know if he should call you or give you space." Tell him he can call me when he's ready to have a real conversation, I replied. No yelling, no manipulation, just honesty. Laura nodded. I'll tell him. We spent the rest of the video call talking about her classes, her job, her life. She told me she had started therapy to process some things with her family. She said her therapist told her it was important to set healthy boundaries. Just like you, Grandma, she said. You set boundaries and you respected yourself. That's what I'm learning too. I felt proud of her. On Saturday afternoon, Rachel had to go back to the city. We said goodbye with a long hug at the door. You're going to be okay alone, she asked. I'm going to be perfect, I replied. If you need me, call me, anytime. I know. I watched her drive away in her SUV and then went back inside my house. My house. Those words still filled me with awe. That night, sitting on the terrace with a glass of wine, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I hesitated before answering. Finally, I swiped the screen. Hello, Daniel. Hi, Mom, he said. He sounded tired. Can I talk to you? Go ahead. There was a long pause. Then I heard him take a deep breath. I've been thinking a lot this week about what happened, about what I said, about how I treated you. I'm listening, I said, not making it easy for him. You were right, he said finally, about everything. I treated you like you were my solution to everything. I yelled at you when I should have respected you. I took your space as if it were my right, and I never ever asked you how you were or what you needed. I didn't respond. I let the silence do its work. And I know apologizing isn't going to fix everything, he continued. I know I caused damage that will take time to heal, but I want you to know that I am sorry. I'm truly sorry. His voice broke at the end. Thank you for saying that, I replied calmly. I needed to hear it. Do you think you can ever forgive me? I don't know, Daniel. Honestly, I don't know. He took a shaky breath. I understand. But what I do know, I continued, is that I'm not going back to living like I did before. I'm not going to be the mother who says yes to everything. I'm not sacrificing my peace for your comfort. I'm not going to ask you to, he said. I don't know. I want to have a relationship with you. A real relationship. Not one where I only call you when I need something. I'd like that, I said. But it's going to take time, and it's going to require you to really change, not just say you're going to change. I'll do it, he promised. I'll show you. We hung up shortly after. There were no exaggerated promises, no instant reconciliation, just a small first step towards something that might someday become a healthier relationship. I stayed on the terrace late that night, listening to the ocean, feeling the salty breeze on my face. For the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about what someone else needed from me. I was just present, here, now, with myself. The following week, I settled into a routine that filled me with satisfaction. I woke up early and walked on the beach before the tourists arrived. The exercise was good for me, cleared my mind, and gave me energy for the rest of the day. I met other women who also walked in the mornings. Women my age, some widows, others divorced, all looking for the same thing I was. Peace Connection, a life of their own. We formed an informal group. We'd meet at 7, walk for an hour, and then have breakfast together at different cafes on the boardwalk. One of them was named Sarah Calder, a 65-year-old woman who had been a teacher for 40 years. She told me she had moved to the beach after retiring, tired of living in the city, tired of her family's expectations. It's funny, she told me one day over coffee. We spend our whole lives taking care of others, and when we finally decide to take care of ourselves, they call us selfish. Exactly, I replied, as if having your own life is a crime. We became friends quickly. Sarah introduced me to her circle of friends, women who played cards on Tuesdays, who went to yoga classes on Thursdays, who hosted dinners on Saturdays. They welcomed me with open arms. For the first time in years, I had a social life that didn't revolve around my family. I had friends who called me to go out, not to ask for favors. I had plans that I made because I wanted to, not because someone else needed me to. A month after I moved, Laura came to visit. She arrived on a Friday afternoon with a small backpack and a radiant smile. "Grandma," she said, hugging me tight, "this is incredible." I showed her every corner of the house. She took pictures of everything: the terrace, the sea, my room, the kitchen. Then she posted a photo to her social media with a message that said, "Visiting the bravest woman I know." That night we cooked together. We made fresh fish I had bought at the market salad rice. We ate on the terrace watching the sunset. Laura told me about college, about her friends, about a boy she liked. It was so different from the dinners at my old house. There was no tension, no silent demands, no resentment floating in the air. There was just genuine conversation between two people who truly loved each other. "How's your dad?" I asked eventually. Laura set her fork down on her plate. "He's okay. Different, quieter, more thoughtful. I think he's really processing what happened." "And Jessica?" "Different too. I don't know how to say it. Less demanding, maybe, like she's realized something." "I'm glad to hear that," I said sincerely. Laura looked at me with those dark eyes so much like my own. "Dad wants to visit you, but he's afraid you'll say no." "I'm not going to say no," I replied. "But I'm not ready yet." "I understand," Laura said. "And he'll understand too." On Saturday, I took Laura to see my favorite places. The artisan market, the bakery with the best sweet bread, the viewpoint where you could see the whole bay. She fell in love with the town as much as I had. "I could live here," she said as we walked along the boardwalk. "It's so peaceful, so beautiful." "Whenever you want, sweetheart. You'll always have a room waiting for you." Laura left on Sunday afternoon. We said goodbye with a long hug. "Take care of yourself, Grandma, and don't let anyone make you feel bad for choosing yourself." "Never again," I promised. I watched her drive away and went back to my house feeling a mix of nostalgia and satisfaction. Nostalgia for the days when Laura was little and I was the grandmother who spoiled her. Satisfaction because now our relationship was between two adults who respected each other. 2 months after I moved, I received a package in the mail. It was from Daniel. Inside was a handwritten letter and a framed photo. The photo was of Daniel when he was 5 years old. We were at a park, he was on my shoulders, both of us laughing. I had forgotten that photo existed. The letter said, "Mom, I found this photo while I was unpacking. It made me remember who you always were for me, my refuge, my support, my everything. And it made me realize when I stopped treating you like that. I don't know at what point I started seeing you as a resource instead of a person. But I know it was wrong. I'm going to therapy. My therapist is helping me understand patterns I repeated without realizing it. Patterns of taking without giving, of demanding without thanking, of assuming instead of asking. I'm not writing this to ask you to come back or to forgive everything immediately. I just want you to know that I'm working on being better. For me, for Jessica, and someday I hope for you. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to show it without asking for something in return. Daniel." I read the letter 3 times. I cried a little, not from sadness, but from hope. Maybe my son really was changing. Maybe pulling away had been the best thing I could have done, not just for me, but for him too. I took a picture of the letter and sent it to Rachel. She replied, "Real progress, but don't let your guard down yet." She was right. Real change took time. 3 months after I moved, I hosted a small get-together at my house. I invited my group of friends from the boardwalk, Sarah, Rachel, who came from the city, and 3 other women I had met in yoga class. We cooked together, laughed, drank wine, told stories. Every one of us had a similar story. Women who had given so much that they had forgotten themselves. Women who had finally decided to live. "A toast to those who dared," Sarah said, raising her glass. "To those who said enough. To those who chose peace over guilt." We all toasted. The sound of clinking glasses mixed with laughter and the sound of the sea. That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone on the terrace with a cup of tea. I took out my phone and opened my notes app. I wrote, "Today marks 3 months since I moved. 3 months since I made the hardest and most necessary decision of my life. 3 months since I stopped living for others and started living for myself. And what I've discovered is this: I am not selfish for loving myself. I am not a bad mother for setting boundaries. I am not cruel for protecting my peace. I am human. I am a woman who deserves dignity, respect, and tranquility. And finally, after 69 years, I understand that. I saved the note and looked at the dark sea lit by the moon. Daniel called me once a week now. Short conversations, not asking for anything, just asking how I was. There was still awkwardness between us, but there was also something new: respect. Jessica had sent me flowers on my birthday with a card that said, "Happy birthday, Adele. I hope you are well." It was a small but significant gesture. Laura visited me once a month. We had become closer than ever. And I, Adele Beltran, continued to wake up every morning to the sound of the sea, continued to drink my coffee on the terrace, continued to walk on the beach with my new friends, continued to build a life that was completely mine. One morning, as I was walking along the shore with my bare feet feeling the wet sand, I thought about everything I had left behind and everything I had gained. I had left behind a house full of memories, but empty of respect. I had left behind a version of myself that existed only to serve. I had left behind the guilt I had been taught to carry. And I had gained peace. I had gained dignity. I had gained time for myself. I had gained true friends. I had gained a life of my own. The sun was beginning to rise on the horizon, painting the sky with impossible colors. I stopped and looked at the beauty, feeling completely present. A wave came and washed over my feet. I smiled. Finally, after so many years of taking care of others, wondering what they needed, what they wanted, how I could help them, I was finally asking the most important question. What do I need? What do I want? How can I help myself? And the answers were simple but profound. I need peace. I want freedom. I can help myself by choosing myself. I took out my phone and took a selfie with the sunrise behind me. My hair was messy from the wind, my face bare of makeup wrinkles telling the story of 69 years of life. But my eyes were shining in a way they hadn't in decades. I sent the photo to Laura with a message. "Good morning from paradise." She replied with heart emojis, and then, "I love you, Grandma. You're my inspiration." I put the phone away and kept walking, because that was exactly what I was doing now, moving forward into the life I deserved, into the peace I had searched for so long. Finally, after so many years of being a mother, a wife, a caregiver, a savior, after so many years of being everything to everyone but myself, I was the one deciding who to take care of. And I had chosen to take care of me.